So it is 12:30 at night, and this simple little project that should only take 5-10 minutes, absolute tops, max, no matter what, took me well over an hour, probably an hour and a half. This is my son's saddle that I just got for him, and let me just say how annoying it is to have a youth saddle. This happens all the time with the fenders. Here's the fender, so long that a child with the size butt that would fit in this saddle would never have legs long enough to fit in the stirrups. Why saddle makers make this, I have no idea, but it drives me crazy. So these fenders are way too long. I've had a couple of students that have been able to sit in the saddle, but they do not make saddles small enough, with short enough fenders for small children. And it's a big frustration of mine because it happens all the time. So here is what I do. It is very easy usually to change out the fender on the saddle. So what I do is I use breast collar tugs, and I do the same thing for English saddles too. So the breast collar tug just makes a really good substitution for the fender. For one, it's a narrow strap, so it makes it so the rider can easily move their legs around and get their feet underneath them. And it's very comfortable for them to ride in when they're little. So this, if you can see up in here, is the bar of the saddle. So basically, it just has to go around the bar of the saddle. This saddle is for a small pony. I'm going to be using it on a mini, and it's so narrow at the top that it was very difficult to get that in there. So what I ended up having to do, just for if anybody ever has to do something like this, what I ended up having to do is take a piece of wire and I put it through here, and I actually taped it on there then, and I ended up feeding it through. And the one side went through relatively easy like that, but the other side, boy, it was a bugger because it's just so narrow up in there. So anybody that has a small saddle like one of these for a mini, a small child with short legs, this is how you go ahead and change that. Now these will need to go down a little bit for him, but he'll be able to ride in this for at least maybe 2 years. So and then I'll have to go through the process of changing out the fenders at that point. But at that point he may outgrow the seat. This is a really small seat on this saddle. So, but that's what I do with all of my little saddles to change it out. Another thing that drives me absolutely crazy with these little saddles, you see this all the time with kid saddles. They have the tapaderos, which I do like because for small riders with little feet, they are able to stay in there just fine, but they don't get their foot caught. A little bit bigger rider, so even when I say bigger, I mean 7-8-year-old will have a hard time keeping their foot in this shallow of a tapadero because their foot will slip out, and that'll be more frustrating than anything for them. So what always happens though is you'll get the saddle and the stirrup will be on like that. So you have to unbuckle it and make it so when the saddle is just sitting there, the stirrup faces that way. I believe they do this just because it looks better sitting on the shelf like that or sitting on the rack. So make sure that when you get your little saddles, you switch the stirrup so it faces the correct way, because then when the rider sits in the seat, they can turn their stirrup like that to put their foot in. Otherwise, when it's like this and they have to turn it, it gets all kinked up under their leg and it just doesn't work. And I'm not willing to take it apart to show you exactly what I mean, but I think you can get the concept of that. So one of the many little things that is so much is so much more helpful when it's done. But boy, what a pain to do it. So my shout out to any saddle makers out there. I think this is a Simcoe. It's just an inexpensive saddle, but by golly, put some shorter fenders on these saddles. This is ridiculous. We shouldn't have to do this. And then make it an option to buy a longer one or something. But yeah, here we go. Good night.